On a summer weekend in 2023, in the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon, three close friends, Emily, Sarah, and Maria, whose names have been changed, decided to go for a hike in the large forest near their homes. This forest was very old, with towering ancient trees and less traveled trails. Locals often avoided going deep into the forest, talking about strange stories and a sense of unease lurking within. Emily, a single young woman who loved adventure, had heard those stories for a long time, and her curiosity grew stronger. She convinced Sarah and Maria, two slightly more hesitant friends, to go deeper into the forest than usual. "Come on," Emily said, her voice full of excitement. "Just a little bit further. Who knows? Maybe we'll find a secret waterfall or something beautiful." Sarah was still a bit worried. "I'm not so sure, Emily. People say this forest is a bit strange." Maria was a little more adventurous. "All right, let's go then, but don't go too deep. Okay?" We began our journey into the forest in the morning. Sunlight filtered through the tree canopy, creating shimmering light spots on the ground. The air was fresh and cool. We followed a small trail. The deeper we went, the fainter the trails became, and we started having to make our own way through the bushes and dry leaves. The silence of the deep forest enveloped us. There was only the sound of our footsteps on the dry leaves and the chirping of birds in the distance. Time passed, and we went deeper into the forest than expected. The surrounding scenery started looking somewhat the same, making it difficult for us to determine our direction. We stopped to rest, checked our phones for a map, but the signal had completely disappeared. "Great," Sarah mumbled. "Are we lost?" "It's okay," Emily said, trying to sound calm. "We just need to go back the way we came." However, when we tried to go back, the path seemed to have changed. The landmarks we remembered were no longer there. The trees looked different. A feeling of unease began to creep into us. Around noon, as we were trying to find our way out, Maria suddenly saw something through the trees in the distance. "Look," she said, pointing towards it. We looked in the direction Maria pointed. Through the dense trees, we saw a structure. It was a house, an old house, looking like it had been abandoned for a very long time. The house was hidden deep in the forest, looking out of place and strange. Its wooden exterior was weathered. The windows were broken, and part of the roof had caved in. "A house in the forest?" Sarah asked, her voice full of surprise. "Why would there be a house here?" Emily felt a strange curiosity. Although the house looked scary, it seemed like a sign of life, or at least that a human had been here once. "Perhaps that's where we could find our way out. Let's go check it out," Emily said. Sarah and Maria hesitated. The house looked too scary, and its mysterious location deep in the forest made them feel uneasy. "I don't think this is a good idea, Emily," Sarah said. "The house looks creepy." "Don't worry," Emily said. "It's just an old house. Who knows? Maybe there's something interesting inside." After some persuasion, Sarah and Maria reluctantly agreed. We walked towards the house, pushing through the bushes and foliage. The closer we got, the more dilapidated and gloomy the house looked. When we reached the front of the house, the air around us suddenly became unusually cold. The smell of dampness and something decaying permeated the air. The main door of the house was slightly ajar, as if inviting us in. Emily walked up the rotting wooden steps, her footsteps making a creaking sound. She looked inside through the gap in the door. It was dark inside. "Let's go inside and see," Emily said. Sarah and Maria stood behind, filled with worry. "Be careful, Emily," Sarah whispered. Emily took a deep breath and stepped inside. Sarah and Maria followed. We didn't know that stepping into the old house in the forbidden forest was stepping into something beyond comprehension. A maze with no exit, where evil things were waiting. The path leading into darkness had been opened. We stepped inside the old house in the forest. It was dark and damp inside. The strong smell of old dust and mold filled our nostrils. The faint light from the main door was the only source of illumination. Emily took out her phone, turning on the flashlight. The flashlight beam illuminated the space inside. We found ourselves standing in a spacious living room, but it was full of dust and cobwebs. Old, damaged furniture lay scattered around. The windows were broken, and there were strange damp stains on the walls. The air in the room was unusually cold, colder than it was outside. "It's creepy," Maria mumbled, her voice slightly trembling. "Yeah," Sarah agreed. "I don't really like this place." However, Emily still maintained her curiosity. "Look at this," she said, pointing to an old piano in the corner of the room. "This house must have a fascinating history." We walked around the living room, looking at the old items. There were no signs of anyone having been here recently. We looked for a door on the opposite side of the main entrance, hoping to find a way forward. There was a door there. Emily opened the door, and we stepped into a narrow, dark hallway. Emily's flashlight was the only thing providing light. The hallway was long and had many room doors on either side. We decided to explore each room, hoping to find something useful or simply to see what was inside. We opened the first door. It was a bedroom. The bed had collapsed. Old furniture lay scattered. Nothing special. We closed the door and went to the next door. This time it was an old bathroom. The bathtub was stained. The mirror was broken. We continued to explore the rooms. Another bedroom. An old kitchen. A study filled with old, decaying papers. When we reached the end of the hallway, we found another door. Emily opened the door. To our surprise, that door led back to the living room we had just entered at the beginning. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her voice full of confusion. "How did we end up back here?" We looked at each other, bewildered. We had walked straight, without making any turns. How could we have returned to the first room? We decided to try again. We walked back into the hallway, trying to remember the way. We went to the end of the hallway and opened the door there. And then, we found ourselves standing in the living room again. A feeling of unease began to creep into us. Something was wrong with this house. We tried to find our way back to the main door, the door we had entered through. However, when we went to where the main door should have been, we only saw a wall. "Where's the door?" Maria asked, her voice filled with fear. "Where's the main door?" We stared at the empty wall where the entrance should have been. It was as if the door had never existed. A horrifying truth suddenly dawned on us. This house, it wasn't normal. The space inside was warped. We were trapped in the old house in the forbidden forest. We had stepped into a maze where normal physical laws no longer applied. And we didn't know how to get out. We were trapped in the old house, a maze with no exit. Fear enveloped us. We tried desperately to find a way out. But every time we went through a door, we found ourselves in an unexpected place. or back in the room we had just left. The space inside the house seemed to be warping, constantly changing. Hallways led to blank walls. New rooms appeared where they shouldn't be, and doors vanished right after we passed through them. The flashlight on Emily's phone was our only source of light, but it was only enough to illuminate a small portion of the large and dark space inside. As we desperately searched for a way out, strange phenomena began to occur. We started hearing strange noises coming from somewhere in the house. Light footsteps on the floor upstairs when no one was there. Room doors automatically opening and then slamming shut with a dry clank. Gentle scratching on the walls from the other side. Those sounds startled us, our hearts pounding. We knew we weren't just 3 people in this house. Something else was with us. At one point, as we walked down a dark hallway, we suddenly heard a very faint whispering, like voices talking from a distance. The whispering was indistinct, just unclear sounds, but it had a strange timbre. Not like human voices. "Did you guys hear that?" Sarah asked softly, her voice trembling. Emily and Maria nodded, their faces both pale. The whispering seemed to come from one of the closed rooms along the hallway. We stopped in front of a door, listening. The whispering seemed a bit stronger from behind that door. Emily slowly reached out her hand, grabbing the doorknob. The doorknob was unusually cold. She took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. The room inside was pitch black. The flashlight beam shone in. It was an empty room. No furniture, only dust and cobwebs, and an eerie silence. The whispering had completely vanished. We stood there, looking into the empty room, feeling shivers. Where did that whispering come from? This house wasn't just a maze. It was haunted. Those sounds weren't our imagination. They were real. As we closed the door, the whispering suddenly echoed again from somewhere in the distance in the hallway. As if mocking us, fear consumed us. We realized we were trapped in a place where darkness was rising. The haunted house in the Forbidden Forest wasn't just a house. It was an entity, an evil entity trying to keep us here. The sounds from the void, the warping of space, and the feeling of being watched, all were proof that we had entered a place we should never have entered. And we didn't know if we could escape that terrifying maze. The maze of rooms with no exit became increasingly dangerous. The torment by the invisible entity grew more intense. We felt as if it was trying to harm us. We heard terrifying giggling echoing from somewhere in the house. Like a child's laughter, but full of evil. Objects moved more forcefully on their own, thrown off shelves, or falling to the ground abruptly. At one point, as we were walking down a hallway, a door suddenly opened with great force, slamming against the wall with a loud bang. When we looked inside that room, there was nothing there. The warping of space also became more unpredictable. Rooms and hallways changed right before our eyes. Sometimes, we saw fleeting images in mirrors or on reflective surfaces. Distorted faces or strange shapes. We realized that this house wasn't just haunted. It was an evil entity, with a mind of its own. And it was trying to push us to the brink of madness or worse. We tried to delve deeper into the history of the house and the mad architect. In the old diaries, we found notes about strange rituals he performed, about his belief that he was opening a portal to another dimension, where he could control space and time. It seemed he succeeded, but not in the way he desired. He opened a portal, but that portal brought something evil into this world. and that something had overpowered him and his house. The evil entity in the house seemed to be nourished by our fear and despair. The more scared we were, the stronger it became. We tried to stay calm, to encourage each other, but it was hard when you were trapped in a place where everything was against you. One night, as we were trying to sleep in a room we thought was safe, we heard heavy footsteps echoing from outside the room door. The footsteps moved slowly, stopping in front of the door. We held our breath, staring at the door. Then, loud scratching sounds came from the door, like long, sharp fingernails trying to tear through the wood. "Go away," Emily screamed, her voice trembling. "Leave us alone." The scratching stopped. Then heavy, labored breathing came from right outside the door. We were horrified. The entity was right outside the room door. The breathing lasted for several minutes, then stopped. The footsteps moved away, blending into the eerie silence of the house. We knew we were facing something very dangerous. It didn't just want to scare us. It wanted to do something worse. This house was a trap created by a mad architect and an evil force. And we were the prey. Facing the darkness, we knew that our time in this maze with no exit was perhaps running out. After the horrifying night facing the evil presence right outside the room door, we knew we didn't have much time left. The house was trying to push us to our limits. Or worse, we decided not just to try and find a way out, but also to find a way to break the curse or weaken the evil force controlling the house. We reviewed the mad architect's notes, looking for any clues. In a final entry, he wrote about a hidden door, an emergency exit he created in case things got out of control. He described it as a door located in a place that doesn't exist. A space between dimensions. We didn't understand what he meant. A place that doesn't exist. How could we find such a place in a maze where space constantly changed? However, it was our only hope. We decided to search for that secret door. Whatever it was, we went throughout the house, trying to find any signs. We opened new doors that appeared strangely, exploring hallways that led to nowhere. While searching, the supernatural phenomena continued, more intensely. Giggling echoed everywhere. Objects flew around. Shadows flitted past faster, closer. It seemed the evil entity didn't want us to find the exit. At one point, when we were in a large room we had never seen before, which looked like an old, dilapidated library, we felt a strange energy emanating from a wall. The wall looked normal, but as we approached, the air around it became colder, and there was a faint vibration coming from inside the wall. We looked at each other hopefully. Perhaps this was the place the architect had spoken of. Emily slowly reached out her hand, touching the wall. As soon as her hand touched it, the wall seemed to become transparent for a moment, revealing a strange space behind it. That space looked like a mixture of bizarre colors and shapes, unlike anywhere we had ever seen. And in the middle of that space, something was hovering, a blurry black shadow, seemingly without a definite shape. But it carried a terrifying evil energy. That was the entity haunting the house. Right next to that black shadow, a door slowly materialized in the strange space. That door looked very ordinary, like an old wooden door. "That's it," Sarah screamed. The door. The evil entity seemed to realize we had found the exit. It slowly turned around, looking directly at us, although it had no clear eyes. We felt its cold and angry gaze. It began to move towards us, gliding in the strange space. "Run!" Maria screamed. We didn't hesitate. We rushed towards the door, materializing in the strange space. Emily was the first to go through the door. Sarah followed. Maria was the last. As soon as Maria stepped through the door, the strange space behind us suddenly vanished, and the door slammed shut with a loud bang. We found ourselves standing in the familiar forest. Sunlight streamed down, and the air was fresh. We had escaped the haunted house. We turned around to look towards where the house should have been. Nothing was there, only trees and bushes. The house had disappeared. However, the fear and the haunting memory of the maze of rooms, the strange sounds, the invisible presence, and the evil shadow remained, following us forever. We escaped the deadly maze, but we never truly escaped the fear it had sown. The haunted house in the forbidden forest is still out there somewhere, hidden in space, waiting for its next victims. And we, the survivors, will forever be a reminder of the existence of evil things hidden in places we shouldn't go into. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and unexplained mysteries, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.